Well, good evening and welcome. My name is Mark Shaw, and I want to tell you right away, I want to be honest with you, I want to tell you right away that I have quite an advantage over probably all of you. I grew up in a large city, went to a big high school. My grades were the best in the class. I wrote for the school newspaper, won some awards there. Got some scholarship offer, ended up at Northwestern. You can't beat Northwestern for creative writing and other types of writing. Again, I was the editor of the school newspaper there. Started writing poetry, short stories, my first novel. I did all of that. And just to get some more training, I went to the Iowa Workshop, Writer's Workshop, which is probably the best workshop in the country. So I was really prepared with all the training I had when I first began to look at becoming published, all right? Now, everything I just told you is absolutely false, all right? And I hope my story in many ways will inspire you. I'm from a small town in Indiana. One of the reasons that people say my books are easily read is because I don't have a large vocabulary. I don't know a lot of big words. I was a terrible student in high school, got a D in English. I remember Mrs. Fincham almost kicked me out. By the grace of God, I got into Purdue University. I was going to be an engineer. I got a 5 on a physics test the first year and dropped out of that and started to get into economics. Mostly I played golf and chased women and went to bars and things like that during my 5 years and 3 summer schools at Purdue. I got a degree in economics, got out, got fired, my first job. I ended up being able to get into a law school. And at one point I thought I really had better grades in law school than I did at Purdue, but that wasn't true. So I never had that intellect. I never wrote anything much. I never wrote anything long form. The only thing I did write is when I became a criminal defense lawyer, I wrote some pleadings for cases, sometimes an appeal, whatever it was. In fact, you'll get a kick out of this. When I moved from the Midwest to California, I thought I would try writing a novel. And so I did. And like most people who don't know that you can't send a manuscript into publishers, you know, they will never even look at it, especially these days. I remember exactly the words that came back in a letter from that publisher, that my writing was what they called sophomoric. Now, I'm really still not sure exactly what that meant, but they sent the manuscript back, and I knew it wasn't something very nice, all right? So today, I've written all these books and more. Now, I'm not putting them here to boast to you about all the books I've written. I think we're up to 27 or 28 now. I'm only saying to you, if I can do it, so can you. All right? If I can do it, so can you. So with all that said, I want you to stand up for a minute, okay? Just stand up for a minute. Only take a minute. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I will be published. I will be published. I will be published. I will be published. All right, thank you. So what are we going to do tonight? Well, everything's based on my book that I wrote, How to Become a Published Author. I think it's probably, and I am going to boast a little bit, I think it's the most complete book on book publishing that's been written. Many people who would address ones like you would do so, and they may have never published a book. We see that a lot. I have clients who hire me as a literary consultant. Literary consultants are a dime a dozen, but most of them have never written a book. How in the world do they know how the book publishing world works if they haven't written a book? But they charge people, they hoodwink them into getting involved in all of that. It really bothers me that way. This particular book, though, you will hear no theory tonight. This is all practical information, and there's lots of ways to do this, but it's what I have done. It's the road, the journey that I have taken to publish all these books. There's the novel Courage in the Face of Evil, a collaboration with a famous aviator, a book about Larry Bird, a book about Mike Tyson, my 2 books about Dorothy Kilgallen, Denial of Justice, and The Best-Selling Reporter Who Knew Too Much, which is being developed as a film now. So I've hit all the different kinds of books that you can publish. Certainly not poetry, certainly not children's book, and certainly not academic books. Those are different animals. But my strategies, my method, will really work for about any book that you're wanting to publish. So this particular book, what does it have in it? It has the 10 steps that we're going to go through tonight. It also has tips in there about how to get through the publishing process in the easiest way. There is sample writing in there from some of the masters. There's exercises on grammar and punctuation that we'll talk about. There's sample book proposals and query letters. There's sample publishing agreements, literary publishing agreements, agent agreements. All of these things are in there so that, people can use the book as guidelines when they're going to try to be published. So right away, we come up with one of the most important things I'll tell you tonight. The book publishing formula. I can never promise anybody that they're going to be published, whether I mentor them or they hire me, whatever it may be. I can't do that. But I can optimize your chances to be published. And that's what my attempt is tonight, is to get you in a situation where you have the best chance of becoming published. And here's the book publishing formula that I say over and over. You need a unique book idea. Now we're talking about fiction, nonfiction, short stories, whatever it may be that way. A unique book idea. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can tell if you have a unique book idea. Plus great writing and a well-defined publishing strategy, which is a lot of what we'll talk about tonight. But I'm going to emphasize this many times tonight. None of this works, optimizing the chances to be published, without that second one, great writing. You have really got to work on your writing and make sure it's the best it can possibly be if you're a writer who's never been published before. Okay? This is a tough business. Everybody wants to publish a book. All right? It's hard. It takes discipline. You have to have thick skin, because you're going to end up with a lot of rejection here and there. I use rejection as inspiration, as I'll talk to you about later. So the topics that we're going to talk about. How to decide if a book concept has great publishing potential. How to create unique storytelling ideas with a flair. Tips regarding how to improve your writing skills. Why it's essential to market a query letter and a book proposal, not the manuscript. What buzzwords can help create the perfect query letter and book proposal. How to choose literary agents and publishers looking for your books. And what publishing alternative is best for you. How to optimize creative marketing and promotion opportunities. And I also, of course, being a lawyer, I'll talk a little bit about protecting your legal rights. The 10 steps are these. And these are the 10 steps that I suggest people follow. They work for me, and they work for clients of mine who are now published. On the front page here, or front cover of this book, is Christine Montross, who is a client of mine. She's now on the New York Times bestseller list. She followed the rules. There are rules in the publishing industry. There are no shortcuts, I'm telling you. And what I hate to see is people, I just got a little bit of a chill saying this because it bothers me so much. When the great writers out there who have never been published at all because they didn't follow the rules of the publishing industry. You've got to do that. There are no shortcuts. You can't take a manuscript now, no matter how good it is, and send it to a publisher. You'll never hear from them. I think they go into like a black hole someplace. All right? Literary agents the same way. All right? It won't work. No shortcuts. So I'm going to say to you, analyze the publishing industry to gain confidence. Number 2, write a story you are passionate about, but one that is marketable. This is in the handout that I gave you. Your passport to publication is good writing, as I pointed out a little bit ago. There is no one right way to tell a story, but there is a best way. Preparing an outline is a blueprint for success. Traditional publishing is a writer's best friend. Market the query letter and book proposal, not the book, and write a query letter next to none. The author's duty is book promotion and marketing campaigns. And then we'll talk about protecting your legal rights with copyright. Now, you can make notes as you go along, and then once I'm done, we'll take any questions that you have. So analyze the publishing industry to gain confidence. Well, if you want to be a doctor, what do? You go to medical school. If you want to be a lawyer, you go to law school. If you want to be a beautician, you go to beautician school. If you want to be an electrician, you get training that way. How many aspiring authors do I know that just jump into this? They're so excited about writing a book and everything else. And what happens is if they don't know about the book business, and that's what you need to know about, so that you're in tune with what's happening today, tomorrow, next week, what happened in the past, you use all this information. If you don't do that, then you're going to get rejections. Your book's not going to become published. And unfortunately, as I say, what I find is there are some great manuscripts that are in a desk drawer. They never went any further than that. I know of one occasion of a Midwestern writer who, didn't follow the rules, got some rejections, and gave up. I hate to see people give up. All right? It just bothers me because there's some great stories out there. And I'm going to say this before I forget. A book, ladies and gentlemen, is like a megaphone. Okay? The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, the bestseller. It's out there everywhere now. People have read this book about Dorothy Kilgallen, the JFK assassination, everything else. Some people have been inspired by Dorothy's story. They learn new information about the JFK assassination. It's a true crime murder mystery. Books are like a megaphone, all right? And that's what you want. You have a message. You want to write a book. It takes hard work, and you want to get that book out there. I was just really proud to see that in this particular library, there's 3 of my books up there. It means a lot to me that has happened, and you never know. I was talking to a gentleman, Mark, out here. You never know what impact your book can have on somebody. Maybe they're going through some rough times, and you've written a book about how to get through anxiety or other kinds of things, or they're going through a low point and they need to write something that has a little humor in it. You can help people a great deal with your books. So here's some tips on how to become educated. Again, this is just practical information. Visit the chain bookstores, or I guess I should just mostly say chain bookstore, because there aren't very many of them anymore, or independent bookstores, Kepler's, others, Books Inc., those kinds of bookstores. But you're going in there not as a customer. You're going in there on a research mission. And what you can learn in there is absolutely amazing. So let's just, if you will, think about the book that you were intending to write or you're writing that you want to get published, all right? What you need to know about is other books that are similar to the one that you're going to publish. So you go into the bookstore and you pick up a book, all right? And you see that it's somewhat similar. It's a biography. Biographies, by the way, are a great way to get started in the publishing business. Okay? Write a good biography, and then you can move on from there, as we'll talk about. So what do they see? Well, this is called The Reporter Who Knew Too Much. Well, you might say to yourself, that's a pretty darn good title. Titles are really important with regard to books, regard to films, regard to television series, whatever it is, That's really important. The subtitle is going to tell you the mysterious death of What's My Line TV star and media icon Dorothy Kilgallen. Well, now I kind of figure out what I want in my subtitle. All right. On the inside cover of the book is the flap material. This material is going to be part of the promotion for the book. And when we talk about book proposals in a little while, we'll talk about an overview for nonfiction and a synopsis for fiction. Well, right away, you kind of learn how the author, usually in coordination with the publisher, has come up with this amount of material which is designed to do what? Get the consumer to open the book, read that, and say, I need to read this book, right? All right? You go to the back, and you see about the author, all right? Well, you may learn about that particular author and who they are and why they've written the book and different things like that. That's really important. Another great way of learning information is in the back here, and that's the acknowledgments. Because you're going to start to look for a literary agent or a publisher. Well, right away, by the way, you learned something to begin with. I forgot. On this page, who published this book? Okay? That's going to give you an idea. If your book's a biography about a famous journalist or a famous person of some sort, well, now you know here's a publisher who publishes that kind of book, right? All right? And in the acknowledgement, you'll get names. Acknowledgements, you'll get the names of the literary agent who represented the author. You'll get the editor at the publishing company. What you're starting to do, if you understand what I'm saying, is you're starting to get all this information. And you may make a file in your Word documents and just book research, And while you're writing your book, then take a little time and do your research so you're starting to understand exactly what kind of a ball game you're really in. I'll mention this particular website many times, publisherslunch.com. Has anybody ever heard of it? I've given this talk, I don't know how many times, and I am absolutely amazed with anybody who is thinking about being a published author, not knowing about Publisher's Lunch. It is the absolute Bible of the publishing industry. Now there's the website, and you can go in there and you can look at it for free. And there's information in there about books being published, some news, some different things. But the real gems come from subscribing to this. I think it's $20 or $25 a month now. You can take it for 1 month if you want to. But we'll talk a little bit more about what's in there when we get to literary agents and publishers. But by subscribing to it, you can go to a page where you can throw in the kind of book you're writing. You're looking for an agent. Get that information in there and everything. And I'm telling you what, right away, it will pop up 100 possible literary agents for that type of book. 100 possible publishers for that kind of book. This is essential information that you must have. And it's really going to help you. I have a client who wrote a novel about the death penalty, and it's a very, very fine book. And he finally decided yesterday he wants to just look for a publisher for several reasons right now. And he asked me to find publishers where you don't have to have a literary agent. Many of you may know there's the big 5 publishers, Random House, Simon & Schuster, and so on and so forth. Those kinds of publishers, you're going to have a literary agent. They will not take unsolicited manuscripts without that. But there's many even large publishers, some mid-sized publishers and smaller ones who will. So he asked me to go ahead and do some research and give him 25 websites where he could send his material, his book proposal, his query letter that I helped him put together, and submit his book that way. And I went into where? Publisher's Lunch. That's where all the information is. And it's current. You're going to see books that were sold yesterday. In that, I'm going a little further than I usually do, but I'll just tell you, when you go in there, you can see, for instance, let's say that you're writing a novel, a horror story, all right? You'll go into these icons and you'll hit horror story under fiction, and it'll pop up all these names. You can actually go to that literary agent or publisher's website, and you can see the books that they have been representing or publishing. That's incredible information that you have then, all right? And what it'll say something like Mark Shaw's book, Courage in the Face of Evil, sold by his agent, Frank Wyman, to Simon & Schuster in a blank figure deal, and then it talks about what the genre of the book is and what it's all about and everything. That's tremendous information for you. And you start making these lists. Publishers, agents, types of books that are like yours, all of that will come in handy when we talk about query letters and book proposals. And as I say, you compile a list of all of this information as you're learning more and more about what's happening. I'm not a great believer in conventions or whatever, but Book Expo America is the king of the conventions. I think it's every summer, June, usually in New York City now. You can learn everything about the damn book business by just going through there, walking through the booths and walking through the exhibits and everything else. It's a wonderful thing to do. But there are also regional book conferences and conventions. The San Francisco Writers Conference is one, Santa Barbara Writers Conference. Just be careful, though. There's a lot of those conferences out there that promise a lot more than they actually provide. So just watch yourself that way in terms of doing that. I think you don't need those conferences, but you do meet people. You can get appointments with agents and publishers and everything. I still feel like you can do that kind of research with what I'm talking about. And what I say is beware of false information about these kind of things. Watch for the scams. All right, hone your writing skills. Writing a story. Okay, step number 2, write a story you are passionate about, one that is marketable. Let's say that very slowly. Write a story you are passionate about, but one that is marketable. Now, why do I say that? Well, first of all, you need to be passionate about your books. but you're writing. It's hard. It takes long hours. There's days when you want to take that manuscript, tear it up, and throw it in the fire. Let the dog take it outside and never see it again. So it's hard work. So you do have to have a passion for your writing. And I'll tell you another reason, because I believe that passion comes through in your words, in your storytelling, in the message that you are going to provide for readers, okay? So you need to be passionate. But on the other hand, writing a book that is not marketable, that nobody's ever going to see except your best friend, you know, that's probably not what you're after, because you do have a message in your book and you do want to make a difference in people's lives who are going to read that book. So you want it to be marketable as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about exactly how you can know whether that will happen. People ask me all the time, are you better off starting your writing career by writing fiction or nonfiction? Well, you might think about that for a minute. What do you think? Well, there's a 95% 5% rule. That is that 95% of the books that are written, all right, nonfiction, 5% of them sell. All right? 5% of the amount of books that are sold are fiction. The other one's nonfiction. This is fiction. 95% of them are sold. Fiction is a much larger marketplace these days than nonfiction. I have to tend to believe that while there are still opportunities open in the nonfiction area, you've really got to come up with something unique. But if you write a, just a dramatic mystery, murder mystery, or something in the fiction area, you've probably got a better chance. And here's one of the reasons, all right? With nonfiction, all right, the star of the book is the book. In other words, the Dorothy Kilgallen story, this book became very successful because of 3 reasons. Number one, Dorothy Kilgallen, who you may have remembered was a star on What's My Line, the television show in the 60s. Her name was much more magic than we thought it was today. Number two, anything that touches the JFK assassination has some marketability to it. And number three, it's a true crime murder mystery. But the star of the book is not me. The star is the book. With fiction, all right, with fiction, it's the author who is mostly the star of the book. Now that makes it harder to go forward, but also, remember this, publishers need you. Literary agents need you. They can't do a darn thing unless they have writers like you who are writing books, right? So they need you. And there's a market out there for it. So with fiction, for instance, if that's what you want to write about, there's still some unique, crazy ideas that you can come up with and all of that give the book more of a unique flavor to it. One more thing with nonfiction. When I talk about uniqueness, what you're looking for in a biography or a self-help book or whatever else it may be, a diet book, I don't know, all of the things that you could write. But what you're looking at there is that you want something that's unique, all right? So let's say you go to the bookstore and you see, let's take the JFK assassination. At least 1,000 books have been written about the JFK assassination, okay? So if I went to the library or the bookstore and I saw those books, I think, well, another book about the JFK assassination, that will never sell. But I had a unique idea. I had a slant on it. Because based on my background as a criminal defense lawyer, I looked at the JFK assassination different than just about anybody else based on motive. I looked at why Bobby Kennedy wasn't killed instead of why JFK was. All right? Instead of why JFK was, why Bobby wasn't. And if you do that, it changes everything, but it all goes back to the 1960 election when Joe Kennedy used some of his mob friends to win that election, promising them that he'd leave them alone when they got in the White House, and then he appointed Bobby Kennedy Attorney General, and he went after those guys, all right? So I had that slant on it, plus I had this dear woman, Dorothy Kilgallen, that I found out about, who was the most credible reporter about the JFK assassination in history. She was at the Jack Ruby trial. She's the only one who interviewed him, and she wrote all these articles and everything. So when I presented that along with my agent to a publishing company, I had a different slant. And that's what you want to do. Uniqueness. Broaden the scope, all right? Broaden the scope of your book. We're going to talk about the book audience when we get back to book proposals, so we'll leave that for there. Consider collaboration of getting into the book business. Biographies are good, as I've told you. There are various other books that are very good, but collaboration can mean a lot because what you're looking for is credibility with your writing. You want a publisher or a literary agent to say, a literary agent, for instance, I better represent this writer or I'm going to be sorry I didn't. Or a publisher to say, I better publish this book or I'm going to be sorry. So right away when I began, there was a famous aviator named R.A. Bob Hoover, one of the greatest aviators who ever lived. One of these guys, he was a hero in World War II. One of those guys that, flew these planes in pretzel form and then landed them on a dime. Well, through a connection I had with a pretty famous lawyer, Bob Hoover permitted me to write his life story. So it's Bob Hoover's story, but I helped him write it. So my name being on there with his, that added credibility to what I was doing because I was just starting out. So if you know somebody who has a fascinating story, you might want to talk to them and help them write their story. And that's just another achievement that you have as you keep building this credential to the point where you feel like you now have the credibility to get a literary agent or publisher. Build in promotion. There's a book in here somewhere that I wrote with Don Larson, who pitched the only perfect game in World Series history in 1956. Okay? That's never happened before or since, and I don't think it ever will. It's a wonderful story, inspiring story. And so when did we bring that book out? 1996. 40th anniversary, 2006. The 50th anniversary of The Perfect Game. So if you can have built-in promotion with your book, that adds another feather in there, another ingredient to why a publisher may want to publish that book because it's all about promotion. How can they sell the book? And so connecting it to an anniversary or whatever is a big deal. Why am I the one person in the world to write this book? This is incredibly important. You've got to show them why you are the expert. With fiction, it may be that you've done all this research about something that's unknown. There was you heard you found some information about a flight to Mars that nobody knew about and it hasn't been corroborated, and so you can't really write a true story about that, but you're going to weave that into fiction. Well, you're unique then as the expert because you did all this research, okay? Or with nonfiction, it's because, yes, you've done the work, you've lived the story. A lot of stories are written by people who have lived through problems and different kinds of things, and they can tell their own stories. I want to make sure I tell you this right away before I go any further. One dirty word in the publishing business is memoir. The reason it's a dirty word is because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of memoirs out there. That's not to say that they're not great stories for people, but there's so many of them out there that many times publishers say, oh no, another memoir. What I call them is slices of history. I was telling someone that today who is approaching me to help her write a book about a famous physicist. Even though I got my 5 in physics at Purdue, I still feel like I might be able to help her with that book. But, okay, it's that kind of situation because she has written this biography and she knew this famous physicist. And so now she can write that biography because she's the one person in the world to write it. Okay, we talked about these things. Broad readership. Did I mention that? Broad readership. We'll get to audience that when we talk about book publishing. And when I mention all these things that you're going to learn about the publishing business or writing the story that you're passionate about, everything that I'm telling you are the answers to questions that a literary agent or publisher will ask you if you could possibly sit across from them at their desk in New York City. Okay? They would be peppering you with these kinds of questions. Why are you the most unique person to write this book? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? So you can't be there with them. So we're going to put that material in a book proposal and query letter, but that's the kind of thing that you're doing. Can you name 5 successful books similar to yours? It's like Hollywood Land. This film was great. Yeah, right? Okay, that film was great. So this film, which is similar to that film, is going to be successful as well. That's why we are inundated with all of these copycats. Frozen 16 will come out someday, probably. You know, that's how this works, because it's a proven formula. Timely subjects. Well, let's see. What's timely today? Maybe politics, would you say? Well, there's a million books out there about politics, but maybe you've got a different slant or angle on what's happening today with politics. Maybe you want to write a humorous book about politics, whatever it may be. Does your book provide an answer to a question? Dealing with anxiety, for instance, dealing with losing weight. How can you entertain somebody with what you're going to write? All of those things are important. This summer I decided I want to see if I couldn't make myself smarter. So I read 3 biographies. I read a biography of Leonardo da Vinci. I read a biography of Einstein. And I read a biography of Michelangelo. Geniuses for sure. But there's a lot of inspiring things in there. And many of them were really great writers, so you can learn some things from them too. But I want to mention right now a commonality among these 3 men that I saw in there as I read the book. They were asked, when they were interviewed, what was the most important characteristic of a human being? What's the most important characteristic that a human being should have? All right? Now I want you just to think a minute, but I'm going to tell you. It starts with C. What do you think it is? Curiosity. They were all very curious people. I feel like I'm curious. I want to find out the truth about things. That's why I keep fighting for Dorothy Kilgallen to get the justice she deserves. There was no investigation of her death in 1965. All of that. I'm curious. I want to know what's happening. You need to be curious. In your writing. What?
Dorothy Kilgallen is like the Epstein of 1965.
I wouldn't go that far, but it's possible. But you want to be curious. All right? You want to be curious. You want to ask questions, especially when it comes to whatever the government says. Question things. That's the only way that things change, is if we question things. Stop and think books. That's what I write. I don't try to change people's minds with things. I don't speculate. I use primary sources. I try to give the facts and let somebody make up their own mind about what happened. All right, so we're through that. And this checklist, there's some things that we can look in there. Can your book sell more than 5,000 copies? That seems to be a rule of law that I'm not so sure that's true anymore. That you have to prove that to them. You can show them by what you've written. Okay. All right, step 3, your passport to publication is good writing. Read the classics. Read the classics. They wrote so much better than we did. Right? Wrote so much better back then than we do today, I believe. I'm amazed when I read great writing. I'm just reading a biography of George Bernard Shaw. I just spoke in Dublin a couple weeks ago. My wife went with me at a festival of politics about Dorothy Kilgallen, the JFK assassination and everything. And I don't know if you've ever been to Ireland, but if you hadn't, go immediately. It's just a wonderful country. We love the people and everything. But in case you don't know, Ireland is just jam-packed with some of the greatest writers in history, all right? Who wrote Gulliver's Travels? That was Jonathan Swift. You got George Bernard Shaw, of course. You got, who else? Beckett, James Joyce. All of these writers are from there. If you feel like writers are just seeping out of and there's a library at the Trinity College that you'll want to see. I decided, by the way, that even though I don't think we can prove that I'm a relative of George Bernard Shaw, or he likes to be called Bernard Shaw, I've decided I am. And I'm going to continue to boast that there's no question that he and I probably are related. All right, what else we got here? Passport to publication, good writing. Let's go with the one here about good writing is clear and concise. Here's something you might think about. Writing is like having a conversation with the reader, but you aren't there. It's like having a conversation with the reader, but you aren't there. How many books do you read where, unfortunately, the writer feels like that you know everything about everything. Well, you don't. I'll just tell you, with The Reporter Knew Too Much, I repeated some material. Thank you. I repeated some material throughout the book because I believe that many of the people who are reading the book would not recall who Dorothy Kilgallen was. And I got criticized that for a while, but many people welcomed it because they didn't feel lost in the book. I wanted to be clear and concise with regard to what I was saying. So that's what you need to do, because the reader can't ask questions. They can't ask questions. So you've got to be clear. When people hire me as a consultant and I look at their manuscripts, that's the thing that jumps out the most, is that it's not clear. They know everything about their subject. The reader knows nothing many times. So you've got to really be careful with regard to doing that. It's really important. When you start to write a manuscript, don't stop. Don't get stuck. If you have a place where something didn't work out or whatever, you can't quite figure, just move on from there and keep going. The number one reason why people quit writing their manuscript is they get stuck and they stop, and then for whatever reason it's hard to go back to what they're doing, because most of the time, as we well know in our society these days, the smartphone is attached to the nose. So therefore they get back on that smartphone, and it's a lot more fun than writing the manuscript, right? And they never get back to it, and that's what I hate to see. Rewrite and edit. Oh, I'd say at least 200 drafts. With the follow-up denial of justice, more than that, all right? At least that many. People send me books all the time. My book is done. Well, I'll tell you what, I could rewrite every single one of these books. They're never done. At some point you have to stop. But as a first-time potential author, your books have to be the best that they can possibly be. You want to rewrite, rewrite, rewrite. I'm not a writer, I'm a rewriter, and so are you. You want to edit as much as you can. And many times you're going to need, before you submit a book proposal or query letter, you're going to need to go ahead and make sure that you have a line editor look at that material. So the punctuation, grammar, everything is in good shape. Because again, it's just got to be as perfect as possible before it's submitted. Remember, there may not be a right word to use, but there is a best word. You know, watch your wording. Go through and make sure that you're using the best English that you can possibly use. Visual images. You really want to make sure with your writing, what do you want to do? You want to have the reader feel like they're right there. When I talk about in this book, or let's see, maybe the book I wrote about Mike Tyson's trial, that was the first book I ever wrote. I wanted the reader to feel like they were right in the courtroom, as Mike Tyson had the worst defense lawyer in history, and all the drama to him being convicted when there was no evidence against him. The same thing with Dorothy Kilgallen, is she makes all these enemies, and now it's toward November 8th, 1965, and she tells people she knows she's in danger. You want the reader to feel that emotion in your book. I use the example in a gunfight, for instance. You can't say that, oh, the gunfighter down here, he really looks nervous. You can't do that. You got to show that he's got sweat on his brow and here, and his hands are shaking and everything, all right? And his hands shaking down there with his gun. He knows probably he's about to die. You got to make the reader feel that when you're writing. Show, not tell. That's the situation with the gunfighter. Be dramatic. Nonfiction, it needs just as much to be dramatic as it does fiction today. You want the story to move along. You want the story with the pacing, all that kind of thing. Be brief. Try to stay away from adjectives. Stephen King is one who says, get rid of your adjectives, kill them all. With Jonathan Pollard's book, Miscarriage of Justice, I did an adjective hunt. And I went through there every single page, and I looked at the adjectives, and I'll bet I killed 80% of them. And the book never suffered for that. Your words need to stand alone. They don't need the crutch of somebody saying what that word means. Good stories. All right, we're going to step number 4. No one right way to tell a story, but a best way. Good stories contain a terrific beginning, middle, and end. And I will say this to you. Every sentence should have a good beginning, middle, and end. Every paragraph, every chapter, every book. All right? You want to tell the complete story. You want to give the reader everything there. Look at different storytelling techniques. You can use a chronological way of telling the story. You can jump around a little bit. Many times what I will do is I'll put, first of all, we know that in every book that's published, if you don't get the reader involved in that book in the first paragraph, all right, of your book, you're in trouble. Because what do? They go to the bookstore and they're going to look and they're going to, see whether or not it's something they want to do. They want to buy that book. Put out, $25, $30 for a hardcover or even $15 for a paperback, all right? With denial of justice, for instance, here's how I opened it. Dorothy Kilgallen's longtime butler, James Clement, answered the door to her lavish townhouse on East 68th Street in New York City in the late morning on a colder than normal November 8th, 1965, 17 days shy of Thanksgiving. As a stiff wind hit him in the face, Clement was alarmed when a flood of FBI agents, or those stating they were FBI agents, swarmed into the hallway. Clement, his voice tempered with a bit of fear, inquired as to why they were there, but received no explanation. So right away, hopefully you're intrigued with why were those FBI agents there, okay? If you don't capture that reader in that first paragraph, if you don't in your manuscript have that material so that a literary agent's going to say, this jumps off the page, it's going to really attract readers, or a publisher the same way, you're doomed. So really make that your most powerful material that you have. Okay. Every good book is a love story. Has a love story in it. A creative artist agent down in LA, they represent the big film stars and everything. I remember him telling me when one of my books was potentially going to be adapted into a screenplay, every good story is a love story. And it doesn't matter whether it's a love story between a woman and a man and a man, a woman and a man, two women, and in this case, a horse and a jockey. There's a love story in there, Seabiscuit. How many of you read Seabiscuit? If you're going to write nonfiction, read this book, all right? Because it is so visually alive. There's some material in here where they're coming down the stretch. As Seabiscuit, if you don't know, was a little bitty horse who was going against this Goliath of a horse. It was David versus Goliath. And this particular writer, Laura Hillenbrand, who's written some great books since then, she says, Seabiscuit delivered a tremendous surge. He slashed into the hole, disappeared between his two larger opponents, then burst into the lead. Pollard, that's the jockey's leg, cleared Witchy by no more than an inch. Pollard dropped his head and rode for all he was worth. One of the stable hands yelled that Seabiscuit had the lead, and she shrieked and all of that. I mean, it's just visual writing. You feel like you're right there on the back of Seabiscuit. That's what you want. And that love story between the horse and the jockey is what made that book successful. Got to have a love story of some sort. All right? Unique, likable characters. You don't want all of your characters to be hateful people that the reader won't care for. You want the reader usually to have somebody to root for, right? The underdog. The underdog comes through like Seabiscuit. One of the common problems that people have with storytelling is they get lazy. The best way, many times, to get your information across to the reader is through dialogue. I don't know if any of you have ever read Stuart Woods' books. He has a character, Barrington, in New York City. He's a former policeman turned into a lawyer. He's very wealthy. He beds every woman he ever runs into. He's a fantastic swashbuckling character, and he is always in trouble with regard to what he's doing. You won't hardly find any description in this book at all. It's almost all dialogue. And that's how he gets his story. You want to read a book in a day? Read Stuart Woods. I'm not saying it's great, it's great writing, isn't great fiction, but it's something that if you're sitting on a beach or you're on an airplane, Stuart Woods is for you. My wife has fallen in love with Louise Penny. And I think it's a lot of because how the light gets in other books, and she's getting her books at this library. Again, look at the storytelling ability of writers who are going to write. Stuart Woods with with fictional crime stories and things. This particular woman has a character. It's Chief Inspector Gamache, I guess, and she's taken that character throughout all of her books. That's really important. Number 5, preparing an outline for a blueprint for success, and we'll just touch on this very briefly. Now, you people who write fiction are going to say, Mark, you're crazy. I don't need an outline. I'm just going to let my mind roam. All these great ideas are going to come into my mind, and I'm going to be just fine. Well, hooey on that. If you're writing nonfiction, you do need an outline. And what that outline does, and it can be on a scrap of paper. The reporter knew too much, started on a napkin. I mean, you're basically, what you're doing is you're looking at what I call the defining moments of your story. The most important moments in your story, just like defining moments in our lives. If each of you think about what's happened in your life, I'll bet you can give me 10 times where life could have gone this way or that way. All right? That's what you're looking for in your books then. You're looking for those defining moments that will make a difference as somebody is reading the book. Well, those can be what? Your outline. Those can be your chapter headings, whatever it may be that way. And all you have to do is then put that down. It may not be the final outline for your book, but it'll give you like what? A blueprint for a house. Okay? You wouldn't build a house without a blueprint, right? So you use that material to guide you along. And here's where it helps you. I was talking to this gentleman, this retired professor, about his book about the death penalty. I'm always interested in how people end up writing a book 150,000 words. Well, no first-time writer is ever going to get a book published by a publishing company that's 150,000 words. All right? And he said, well, sometimes I got off the track. The outline helps you squeeze yourself back in there at times, because that's what can happen. All right? Fortunately, we worked and we worked and we worked, and it's now 90,000 words, and I'm telling you, it's a much better book than it ever was. There's an awful lot of fat that goes into books. Think about the films you go see, all right, or the television series, and you think to yourself, I don't know if you've seen The Irishman that just came out, 3 hours and a half. There's some fat in there. That story could have probably been told in a more quicker way or whatever. But you want your material to be concise and fast pacing and moving along, and there's no time. What's the one word, the B word, that writing cannot be? Boring. Boring is no good. Okay? You got to keep that. You want people, I've been so blessed that people will say, I bought the Reporter too much at 5 o'clock and I read it by 10 o'clock. I mean, you can't imagine how you feel when somebody says that. What does that mean? That I captured them. I got them into Dorothy's story and everything. I'm not boasting about that. I just want you to know that can happen. But it only happens if you're able to captivate the reader. And many times that's staying on track with whatever message you are trying to get across with your book. Okay, so where do we move ahead here? What's number 6? All right, let's get into the publishing area, which, of course, you're all interested in. All right, so traditional publishing, and that's also called trade publishing, is the writer's best friend. First of all, we will be taking a picture of each one of you before you leave today. And if I ever find out that you went ahead and made a deal with what's called a subsidy publisher or a vanity publisher and paid them to publish your book, I'll have you annihilated. All right? Killed. Done. History. It's the worst scam in the world. Dorrance, Author House, iUniverse, all of these people preying on writers. And what do? They say, oh, we'll help you. Sure. We'll edit your manuscript. We'll work on laying out the book. We'll help you with the cover. We'll do all these things. We'll even give you a promotion kit. And we'll give you 25 free books that you can sell. And all these things. And you know what? They will do everything they absolutely say they would. They will do it all. So what's the problem? The books are usually of inferior quality. All right? Bookstores and libraries won't touch them. All right? Because they know about that. And what has happened? The writer ends up with an empty wallet and boxes of books in the basement that they can't sell. The worst example of that is a guy up in Burlingame that came to me after he had done this, unfortunately, and he lost every cent of his 401k program, giving them money after money after money with absolutely worthless books. It made me want to cry. You don't need these people. You don't need them, and why? Because there are valid self-publishing. All right, what are the ways you can be published? Do we have that in here? Yeah. Traditional publishing, we'll get into that to a minute. Traditional self-publishing, or print on demand, which is basically, today a guy was telling me he wanted to get a book out. Well, Fred Dunlap, that I helped write a book about his father called The Dunlap Rules. His father was a football coach, and his father had these rules for football that he thought would transfer to business, so he wrote this book. And he wrote it, and then he went out and he found a printing company, and they printed it, and he printed, I think, 300 or 400 copies. Okay, you can do that. That's all right. And that book, there are some possibilities that you could get it into bookstores. Vanity Press, e-book publishing, we all know what that is. Okay, so these are the publishing alternatives. Now, I say to people when they come to me, what do I want to do with my book? Well, I say, it's up to you. But why not give traditional trade publishing a shot? You've got nothing really to lose. You know, when you get something of a rejection from a literary agent or a publisher, it's not like they're coming to your home and beat the hell out of you. It's just a rejection. We get rejection every day. Whether it's somebody, swerving into a lane ahead of us, or running a stoplight, or somebody, being nasty to us, we get rejection all the time. You use that as inspiration, in my opinion, all right? But with traditional publishing, why not give it a shot? And the way to do that is with a book proposal and a query letter, which I'll talk to you a little bit about. What is traditional publishing? Well, that's where a publishing company decides they want to option the rights to your book. All right? All right? And so what are they going to do? They're going to actually pay you some money with an advance. That advance can be $5 to $1 million or $50 million if you're Stephen King or Grisham or somebody like that. But there's an advance. And then they're going to pay you royalties based on the sale of the book, all right, when it finally is sold. So that's what a traditional publishing is, and you don't put out any money. Also, they're going to help you with two very important things, promotion and distribution, because traditional books published with reputable publishers are very well accepted by libraries and bookstores. And that's where you need to find your audience and all of that. I'm sure that the library people here would agree. They look at those kinds of books. They want those books in here. They want people to be able to come in and read them. So traditional publishing, and we'll talk about query letters and book proposals in a minute. Traditional self-publishing. Unlike subsidy publishing, that's kind of like a badge of honor, because you've gone ahead, you've written your manuscript, and you've decided you want to get it out there, and so you probably use one of two, and hopefully both, of the good self-publishing tools, although there's more than that. Smashwords is now one that's pretty reputable. But it's what used to be called CreateSpace on Amazon and Ingram. Now, CreateSpace is now called Kindle Direct Publishing. And that's a pretty darn good deal. What you do is, you go in, if you don't know about this, you go into the Amazon website, you find Kindle Direct Publishing, you go in there, and there's a template. You put the name of your book in, put the name of your subtitle, number of pages, you put a description of the book in, just like what you would have with the inside of a book cover. You tell them what color paper you want. I think it's either white or off-white. You give them a biography of you. You give them all this information, and then you upload a PDF of your manuscript, okay? And also, as far as covers go, you can have a cover made or make your own cover and upload that, or you can use some template covers. Now, one of the advantages that I want to tell you, and one of the reasons that How to Become a Published Author is up there, one of the great advantages of doing a book on Amazon is that you can revise it at any time. Any time. So this book needs to be revised because things change in the publishing industry. I just revised it about 4 or 5 months ago. And it's amazing because you throw all that in there again, and presto, there's the new book up there. So what they do is you put all that material in there, and then it's uploaded. Amazon then will go ahead and publish a paperback book and an ebook. All right? Goes up on Amazon. As far as the price goes, you're probably wondering, well, why in the world, Mark, would they do this for free, right? Well, the reason that they do is you pick a price for your book, and normally they'll add $2 or $3 to it. And that's how they make their money. But it doesn't cost you anything. Now, one of the problems you have with a book published on Amazon, through Amazon and Kindle Direct Publishing, is that if you can imagine it, bookstores are not real crazy about carrying Amazon books. They detest Amazon. They'd like to blow up Amazon. All right? So how are you going to get in there? Well, it took me a while to learn this, and it's my trusty wife, who's the head of cataloging over at Santa Clara University. She told me, Mark, what people need to do is to go ahead and also self-publish through Ingram. Now, for whatever Ingram and Baker and Taylor are the two major distributors of books. Ingram, for whatever reason, I think they charge $35 or $40 for what they do, but you do the same thing again, and you push it through their system, and it gets on Ingram's list. So now you've got a book that, yes, you published it through Amazon, but also you published it through Ingram, and now that Ingram credential there helps you get into bookstores and libraries. Self-publishing with books is not an easy thing to do, though, with regard to getting them in to libraries and bookstores. My wife, again, gave me some information that I have here about the kinds of things that you need to do. Normally, libraries, especially, will want a review of the book, a credentialed review of the book, and other matters about the book so that they can know that it is a reputable book. And they have, where did I put that? They have different things that they look at. The book must be of national interest and be readily available from national distributors. Review copies must be received at least 3 months before the book of publication. Review coverage is not automatic, and so on and so forth. And you can find all of that if you go to libraryjournal.com and then look at reviews on there. And I think she said also it's the same situation with Publishers Weekly. So you can get a self-published book. Looks good. You've obviously line edited it, so it looks good that way. It's correct and everything. And what is it? It's a first step. Now you've got a credential. You can sell the book. You can have book signings if you want to. You can do what you want. Many people have blogs these days. Well, blogging is a great way to get your information you want out to the public. And you can promote it through blogs. You can promote it through social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is. Because with self-publishing books, what? You are the promoter. All right? You are the promoter. You're not going to get any help from a publishing company. Okay, a lot of this information, again, publisherslunch.com is a good place. Number 6, traditional publishing is the writer's, we did that one. Traditional publishing. And we got the chart up there. This is just how it all works. Let's go to number 7. Market the query letter and book proposal, not the book. Again, you can't send a manuscript in to a publisher. They are not going to give you. I'd like to wait for questions after, please. Just remember it. You're not going to get any success with sending the manuscript in. So your sales tools are what's called a book proposal and a query letter. All right? And with regard to a book proposal, this is just basically giving all the information that you have about your book that is going to convince a literary agent or a publisher to accept your book, either by representation or by publishing it. So there are different types of things that go into the book proposal. There's the title. And again, remember, titles are really important, both in books, television, film. What's a good example? I don't know if any of you ever went to see A Motherless Brooklyn, which is Ed Norton's new film. Well, it's really a great film, but nobody went to see it. Motherless Brooklyn? Nobody knows what that's about, you see. You want to be able to have a catchy title with regard to your book. The tagline, which is this 15 or 20 words that describes your book, that's going to be in your book proposal. The author biography, why you are the one person in the world to write the book. And you actually start that paragraph with those words. All right? This author is the one person in the world to write this book because. Okay? Book audience. the target audience for this book is. All right? And then you want as broad an audience as you can. In this situation, again, it was the broad audience for this book is people who are interested in knowing more about Dorothy Kilgallen, the famous media icon of the 1960s, who are interested in the JFK assassination and like true crime murder mysteries. Okay? That's what the author has written. So you want to be able to give that credential as to what the book's about and the book audience. The book outline is in there. You'll have promotion opportunities in there. How are you going to promote it? These days you need to have a real game plan in terms of how you're going to promote the book, with social media especially. Because again, that's the name of the game with the publishing company. How are they going to sell the book? Okay. As far as taglines goes, or these hooks for the book, 15 words or less, you can check the New York Times bestseller list and on a Sunday, and you'll see the name of the book, the publisher, and then there's a little blurb right next to it. And it just gives a quick little blurb about what that, with regard to what that book's about. USA Today, I haven't read it in a long time now. We don't read newspapers anymore very much. But there's I think Thursdays, they have a bestseller list. You can find those little blurbs in there. And believe me, that's very, very, very important. If somebody says to you, and you're having a conversation, well, I'm writing a book. What's the first thing you're going to say? Well, tell me about it. You got to have that ready. You got to say, all right, what's the best tagline ever, probably? A law student graduates from law school. He's so happy with what he did, and he gets a job in Memphis, Tennessee, that sounds too good to be true, and it is. What book is that? The Firm. That's The Firm. Tom Cruise. All right? John Grisham. See how that worked really well, didn't it? I guess not. Anyway, I think it's the best one. All right, book proposal format. There's all of these things. Again, you need to be able to put the book proposal in the right form. It's normally around 30 pages. There are no staples or anything, because when it's submitted, you want them to be able to look at it page by page and everything. You use Times Roman font, no more than 30 pages, so that it can be copied and all of that. And then the book proposal format, again, you're looking at the book title, the book subtitle, and with The Reporter Knew Too Much, it was so important that I explain very clearly who Dorothy Kilgallen was, because there were going to be a number of young literary agents and young publishers who had no idea who she was. Having a little trouble with this. Okay. All right, let's see here. So continuous. And that's synopsis and synopsis for fiction and overview for nonfiction, which is just below. You have tagline, and then that information is very, very important. With fiction, you want to be able to go ahead and give the dramatic points of your story, those defining moments of your story. Okay? And again, pick up some of the best fiction books that you can read and look at that inside jacket. That's what they will have done. That's the synopsis of the book. Do the same thing with nonfiction, and you'll get a lot of good ideas in terms of how that works. Beginning, middle, and end, we have that. The author's expertise to write the book. Why you're in the one person to write the book. Remember, about 75% of all people who read books are women. So when you're choosing a first book, that's an important thing to think about. Is this book going to be a book that would be interesting to women? Okay. Step number 8, the query letter. Book proposal is about 30 pages. And then what a query letter is, and it's one page, and one page only, although if you're submitting it electronically, you can probably get by with a little more. But it's really a succinct sales tool to sell the book. You write the book proposal with all those segments in there, right, all those sections, and then you squeeze it into one page. And it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. But again, when you do that, you want to be able to have your best material right up front in terms of exactly what the material looks like so that people can know what you're doing. So with The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, famous CBS What's My Line television star, celebrated New York Journal-American columnist and courageous investigative reporter Dorothy Kilgallen was murdered on November 8, 1965. This startling revelation sets the stage for my 25th book, and so on and so forth. So that first paragraph is so important. I think I did that with... all right, I've written a murder mystery series based on a immoral and unethical criminal defense lawyer, much like myself when I began, named Vicar Punch, who crosses the line and gets all kinds of trouble and everything else like that. And so I created this character, all right? And in the query letter that we've put together, it starts by all accounts, flamboyant criminal defense attorney Vicar Punch should be dead. On his 44th birthday, 300 kilovolts of lightning nearly tore his head in two. Gets your interest, doesn't it, as to what happened to this guy, and then goes on from there. Again, you want to catch that reader, because here's what happens. With a query letter and book proposal, when you go ahead and send those, you can send them by snail mail, but most the literary agents, publishers, want them sent electronically, all right? That agent or publisher is probably not going to be the first one that sees it. It'll be an assistant, a secretary, whatever. And they are told, first of all, if that query letter is more than 1 page in length, throw it in the basket. It'll be done. They expect 1 page. You never want to give a literary agent or publisher a reason to say no, okay? A reason to say no. You want them to say yes. So don't make those mistakes. So, 1-page query letter. And you got all your information in there, your defining moments and things like that. Let's move on to step 9, the author's duty, book promotion and marketing campaigns. Now, if you're the self-publishing type, and that's what you do, and it can be a stepping stone then to what else you're going to be doing with regard to promoting the book. But you're the chief bottle washer, everything with regard to your book. And that's difficult. It takes a lot of time. But there are ways to do it. And, for some people, that's the best way to go with the first book that they've written. And then hopefully that book will do well, and they can use that as a stepping stone. As far as finding information about how to promote your book, there are books out there to do that. But I looked on the internet today, and there's some very, very good articles on there. Most of the time, I'm not much of an internet type guy. But I looked on Google today and put in book promotion. It changes all the time. But you'll see some good tips in there in terms of how to promote your book. Some unusual things that you can do. Book signings are not as popular as they used to be. Book publishers used to send authors on tours and have them go to all the bookstores. Well, unless it's Grisham, Stephen King, those kind of people, they really don't do that too much, and they don't even do that with them anymore. Because it's a small audience that you're really going to affect. What they do is get them on television, get them on Instagram, get them Twittered, whatever else it is, because that's a better way of reaching what they want. What they want is a large audience. All right. So that information you can go and check on and see what you can come up with that way. It is the author's duty to promote the book. Now, if you have a traditional publisher who's publishing your book, all right, you're going to get help from that publishing company. That's going to be part of the publishing agreement. Again, there's some of those in the back of how to become a published author. But you're still going to be expected to do your part. And it may be that they will ask you, look, can you put together a video of your talking about your book and put it up on YouTube? Can you do a little bit of a book trailer about your book and put it up on YouTube? Well, in today's world, you can do that, and it's not too costly, all right, to go forward with something like that. And it really helps because a visualization of your book is really going to make a difference in terms of what makes sense that way. 3 things that you do want to do, and we'll get to that. I find my pages, but if you would put up the ones where we have the links to my website, all right? If you're an author, if you don't have a website, you should have one, or a blog for sure. And you have a website. And then for the book that you're writing, you'll want to have probably another website. And with this particular With this particular book, The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, I had markshawbooks.com, I had the Reporter Who Knew Too Much.com, and I had the DorothyKilgallenStory.org, where people could find out more about the book that I was writing. So people could go there. And that made a lot of difference, because in any promotion that we did in social media, we were able to put those links up there. So for instance, on the DorothyKilgallenStory.org, I have all photographs of her. I have videotaped interviews about her. I have her column she wrote about the JFK assassination. I have everything about that. And in the book, we put those links. All right, we put those links. By my doing some of that work, it let the publisher know that I was very serious about this book. And it wasn't expensive to do this, all right? I even went to the point of going ahead and putting a very quick little kind of book teaser about the book up on YouTube. Do we have that? Yeah, right here. Quick and dirty promotion. Not bad, huh? So it is very quick. The guy who created my websites did that, and it's maybe a couple minutes at the most. Again, people's attention span these days is, you got to make it quick and get their attention with regard to that. So I did that. Now, with a book that I'm really proud of that I wrote, based on a Holocaust journal, based on a true story, Courage in the Face of Evil, we also went ahead and did a quick little promotion for it. Let's see that. It's a different kind of promotion, as you'll see.
Even though I have spent years in the camps, this is the worst night of my life. I keep wondering what will happen as it come and arrest me and find little Andre on my fashion. It is May 1943 and the prison is quiet. Every time there is this sound of some kind. I think it is the clumping of German boots. As I stare at the place on the prison ceiling, the stench of death fills my nostrils. It is like I am having a nightmare, and the SS will drag little Andre and me to where they will shoot us dead. Where are you? How I feel this test. Prayer is all I have, and I keep crying and praying, but I wonder if God is hearing me.
So with this particular book, I found a Holocaust diary, and I found the daughter of the woman who wrote it, kept it during the Holocaust. And it's a very special book. And so I use none of my own words in this book. It's just the diary of this woman, who was a German Christian woman who was caught by the Nazis and put in Ravensbrück, which was the only concentration camp for women. When they were going to exterminate all the children, she hid a little girl. And finally, it was going to be exposed, and she had a choice to let the girl be killed because she got in trouble herself, or trust a German prison guard. And she ended up trusting a German prison guard. He could have had them shot, but he actually helped, took the little girl to a pig farm outside the concentration camp and saved the little girl's life. And she and the little girl were saved, and they met with the, after the war, and they went to a war crimes trial, and they saved the life of the German prison guard. It's an incredibly courageous story. And so I wanted this to be able to get people into the story and learn about this incredibly brave woman. So I did that, and that helped because it was a very difficult book to get published, because there's many, many books, and they're all excellent in terms of accounts of the Holocaust. My point with both of these trailers is you do the extra. You do the extra. You follow the rules with regard to what you're doing, the rules I've taught you tonight. This particular video, by the way, will be up on YouTube, so if you've missed some of it, you can watch it. It'll probably be up in a week or so. I want to answer questions for you, but regarding copyright and protecting yourself, many people have the wrong impression of copyright. It will not actually completely protect you against somebody stealing your material if they want to. They can do that. It is only the proof that you will have if you try to stop them, sue them, whatever it is that way. Copyright is a very easy thing to do these days. Library of Congress, Office of Copyright, you go in there, you fill out a form, I think it's $30, $40, and you can do that, and I suggest everyone does that with their writing. You don't have to wait till the book's published, but I think it's a protection for you that I would strongly urge that you do. So we've rushed through an awful lot of material, but I hope this has given you some practical information about what you can do on your own. My email is up here. You can find me through my website. I mentor people. Yes, people hire me for sure, but I also mentor people. If you have questions about things or whatever it may be, you get back with me. I answer every email that comes to me, and I've probably gotten about 2,000 of them about the Dorothy Kilgallen story. I answer every one of them because I feel it's a privilege for me that people have gotten in touch with me that way. So I will help you if I can. And I encourage you all to write your book, all right? Don't put it off. Don't procrastinate. And then use perseverance to get the darn thing published, because you can. I'll just tell you one quick thing. You know, the first book I tried to get published, Down for the Count, I didn't know what to do, so I sent a manuscript in. I got all these rejections, you know, from publishing companies. And I used to put the book in a brown envelope and send it off. And I would go to the post office and take the next one with me, because I knew there would be one that would be in there that was rejected. And I just kept trying. And remember this, it only takes one literary agent to say yes and represent you, and it only takes one publisher to say no, to say yes. And I will tell you, many of these books, there was only one. But that's all it takes. And then your book is out there, and it's a megaphone, and it makes a difference in people's lives, inspires, educates, entertains, whatever it is. So with all that cheerleading in mind, you need to stand up one more time. Come on, stand up. And mean it this time with every part of your soul. I will be published. I will be published. I will be published. I will be published. Thanks for coming.